Hey guys, Tate from Florida here in New York City, and I'm at the world famous historic St. Paul Chapel, which opened in 1766. Unfortunately, this church is most widely known for September 11th attacks in New York City, where pretty much every building surrounding it had a lot of damage or some sort of damage. And this church and cemetery, which we'll go to in a second, had no damage, which is amazing. They used this also to house all the people working, or a lot of the people that were working, helping with the relief efforts afterwards. So I'm gonna walk around here. This was put on the National Historic List as a landmark not until 1960. It has a gorgeous organ, which I'll show you in just a second. You can see the gorgeous organ in the back. And like I said, there's a cemetery that surrounds the building on the outside, and we're going to head out the back door here and talk a little bit about the cemetery and the unfortunate September 11th incidents. Inside the building here, I'm going to tell you there's a lot of volunteers helping out. And you can see this picture on the wall here. And it became a memorial afterwards, but right after the attacks, when the recovery efforts started, police, firefighters, volunteers, anybody who wanted to help was not turned away. And as you can see, they slipped in the pews here. And so inside this little church is the little 9/11 memorial. So I stand corrected with one thing, that there was no damage. There was one single pane of glass was broken in the entire church, which still is amazing to think of. take a walk outside now and check out the cemetery. So here is the cemetery of the church, and you can see the colored structure at the other end of the cemetery. That's where the World Trade Center Memorial is. So, still amazing, sadly, unfortunately amazing, that a single pane of glass was broken here. That's it. Let's take a little walk around the cemetery and have a peek. You can see how, where this is the back of the chapel here, and you can see, pan around slowly here. You can see how there's no cemetery in the front of the church, but it does wrap around both sides. As you can imagine, some of the markers in the cemetery are extremely old. This is called the Bell of Hope. 2002, on the anniversary of September 11th attacks, the Bell of Hope was presented to the people of New York by Lord Mayor of London and the Archbishop of Canterbury. There's another interesting tidbit about this chapel I'd like to point out here too, is that after it was built in 1776, 10 years, almost the day after it opened, a raging fire swept through Lower Manhattan and pretty much destroyed about a quarter of the city, including the Trinity Church, which is currently now the St. Paul's Parish home. The community saved St. Paul's by forming a bucket brigade and dousing the chapel with water. With Trinity in ruin, St. Paul became the primary church until 1790. And of course, like I told you on the inside, Ground Zero recovery workers that offered them a place to rest, eat, and receive medical care during the recovery efforts. Alright, so now way behind the chapel on the back side of it, and right behind me is where the World Trade Centers used to be. So it's no more than a couple hundred yards around there. And all the surrounding buildings here all had damage. Matter of fact, if anybody's been down here or seen pictures, all these buildings were draped with a black mesh as they worked on them and did the recovery efforts, that kind of thing. So that was not the case with this church. So quite amazing. But let's look around a little bit more here. Walk around the cemetery. I would highly recommend if you come to New York City in Lower Manhattan that you stop and not only just pay your respects to people that lived here basically during the recovery efforts, but it's a very historic building.